Hello, citizens. This is Councillor Gian-Carlo, Ward 9 TV Light. This is the secondary suites episode. We're going to talk about what happened historically on March 12, 2018. It was a full day of council. People across the city living in R1 areas had received a note in the mail or a letter in the mail from the City of Calgary saying that we are holding a public hearing on March 12th, and we are talking about adding a discretionary use to the land use bylaw in all R1 districts that makes in-house suites and backyard suites a discretionary use. And so what that does is that it takes, what it did was it proposed to take the land use redesignation required at City Hall. So if you want to put a secondary suite in your R1 house, prior to that, you would have to come to council and plead your case for that one parcel. And that has been going on now. That process has been going on for a couple of years now. Hundreds of individual one-off secondary suites have come through council. Council has approved over 85% of them. And so the question was, are we using everyone's time appropriately, or if this is actually an ethical imperative, can we shorten the timelines, make it more compact? And the sort of the growing consensus with this new council was that we had to do that work. And what we determined was that inserting a discretionary use into the R1 district was the way to get it off of council's plate, remove a tremendous amount of workload from everybody, a massive step in the process. And now if you, and what we were proposing to do was pass that bylaw. What happened after a full day at council, well over 100 public submissions, I would say, there on the floor of council over the course of the day. It was about 65% of the people coming from R1 neighborhoods were against it. I would say that 40% of the people speaking in favor of it came from R1 districts, but also more broadly were advocates from across the city for housing affordability and equity and the creation of complete neighborhoods. And council in a 9-6 vote voted in support of the bylaw. So that changed the world. And what we have now is a world where discretionary use in all our districts throughout the city, secondary suites are there. What we did do, though, was that we took backyard, above garage, cottage homes in people's backyards, and we deferred the bylaw from coming into effect until we finally bring forward the design guidelines and standards for backyard suites. And it was understood that, if you're doing something within the four walls of your house that's minimally impactful on the surrounding area. If you're building a brand new structure, if you're putting a second level on top of a garage, that's much more impactful, and we have to get those design standards right. And I was happy to support that as well. It's a big win. And what we've really done is we've sort of taken Calgary forward with the rest of the nation. We've caught up with the rest of Canada, and now secondary suites are an allowed housing form, or an allowed part of all single detached housing in the city of Calgary, which is a great news. There is more work to do, and the work to be done moving forward is, number one, a lot of the households that we talk about when we talk about when we estimate that there's between 16 to 25,000 households in the city of Calgary that are living in illegal suites. A lot of those, a massive amount of those, are sitting in those 1970s sort of low sloped roof, sort of semi-detached form. And those things lend themselves very well from going from a duplex, from a 2-unit semi-detached to a 4-pack. You basically have a unit on the top, two units on the top floor, 2 units in the basement, because the basements are raised. We see these all over the city, and there's a massive amount of them in Ward 9. One of the things that we heard from the public loud and clear was that people are concerned about safety. I think advocates for safety and tenants' rights are worried about safety. People who were angry about neighborhood change and wanted to throw a fly into the ointment and were against the proposed bylaws that we passed on the 12th we're talking about safety as well. And safety is a big issue, and we want to make sure that every Calgarian can live in a safe and legal home, whether it's a secondary suite or not. Now, the challenge with this semi-detached form that's been turned into a 4-pack is that it's not technically a secondary suite. It's technically a multi-family situation. And so everything that we've done to date on secondary suites has not addressed that issue. And if we want to make those thousands of units safe, the first thing we have to do is make them legal. So in the weeks ahead, I will be putting together a notice of motion directing administration to examine and bring back a report on paths to legality for that kind of building form, and I expect to have a lot of support from my colleagues on council. In the next year or two, after we've seen how the discretionary use process works in the R districts, and we realize that, like the rest of the country, it's not like an apocalyptic change. It's just a very normal thing to do with your home, depending on where you are in your life, where you are, with your family, where you are. It's a private property rights issue. Once it becomes clear that this is not a big deal, I will be working with my colleagues to change the vote. When we first talked about this, I wanted to make in-house suites a permitted use, which means that you don't even need to have a development permit application. You don't have the potential of getting appealed by neighbors and having to defend your right to do that at the Subdivision Development Appeal Board. The gold standard would be to make in-house suites a permitted use, and I will not be fully happy until we get to that point, and I see that rolling out in a year or two's time, but definitely within this term. So those are the next 2 steps on the suite file. I am very pleased that we made the massive step that we did on March 12th, and I look forward to continuing to move the ball forward on this essential component of a complete community. Thank you so much. Gian-Carlo signing off.